Hello and welcome everyone to ElectionSpeakers.com, the place for unique critique of the important speakers of this 2012 presidential campaign. My name is Dr. Dennis Becker. I'm the host of these special programs, and these programs are designed to give voters valuable information needed to make a confident decision on November the 6th. We'll be watching and listening to the candidates and others who are trying to win your vote. Their talking techniques and their tactics are our exclusive topic for this unique critique. Joining me today, and today, by the way, as you all know, is the first of the presidential debates, and we're talking about that one right now. And joining me on this program from left to right around your radio dial, I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves. So joining me, first of all, is...
I'm Alan Zaremba, a professor at Northeastern University in Communication Studies.
Excellent. Thank you, Alan.
Good evening, Dennis. I'm Fred Balfour, 25 years and retired from the computer industry, and another 10 years and retired from the education reform
And a
industry.
veteran of ElectionSpeakers.com. You were with us in the 08 elections, right?
An alumni.
An alumni, great. Right next to Fred is...
Hi, Dennis. It's Lori Schlaff, your longtime colleague at the Speech Improvement Company.
And Lori is joining us again, as she always does. We're going to come back to you in a couple of minutes, Lori, to talk about the scorecard, the judging that we do.
Yep.
But first, let's meet our other next guest. Who's next?
Hey, Dennis, it's Monica Murphy with Speech Improvement Company. Glad to be here once again.
All right, great. Now, listen, we also have joining us tonight a special guest from the Speech Improvement Company, our storytelling coach, because we want to talk a little bit about whether these guys told their stories correctly. So please introduce yourself.
Hi, Dennis. It's Robin Maxfield.
Robin Maxfield. I knew who you were. I just wanted to get you over there on that microphone, hear what you sound like. We have a special treat tonight because we're coming to you from Cafe Nicholas in Brookline, Massachusetts. Now, normally we record in our studios at the Speech Improvement Company, but tonight we have a special audience joining us, and they've been listening and scoring right along, and we're going to be giving you their scores in just a couple of minutes. In addition to that, we have folks listening from around the United States, and Lori's going to tell us a little bit more about that in just a few minutes. And these folks are feeding in their comments to us as we speak through Twitter and Facebook. So we're connected in many different ways tonight. So you'll be hearing scores as we go through the evening, not only from those of us who are right here at the microphone, but from folks who are giving grades and scores and comments from around the United States. So let's get started right away. Lori, I want to start with you for just a moment, if you would. Let's let people know about this scorecard. For those who are joining us for the first time, we do have a scoring process that we use as we do this critique. So tell us a little bit about that scorecard, if you would, please.
Sure. And listeners, you can download the scorecard at ElectionSpeakers.com. So what we're doing is all about presentation and debating and speaking skills as opposed to politics. So it's a unique critique. There are 10 dimensions to the scoring on the scorecard. The highest that you can get in any category is a 10. So our judges, our audience here in the studio, our remote expert judges have rated the candidates on a scale of 1 through 10. Dennis, some of the things on the scorecard are vocal variety, how interesting the candidates are, eye contact, use of gestures, body language, do they have appropriate speed, and are they connecting with the audience at home?
So for those of you who do not have a scorecard, you got to get one, because on the back of that scorecard that Lori's talking about is an explanation of all of those points that she just described. So that scorecard is going to be very helpful to you. And remember, this is just the first of the 3 and 4, actually, 3 presidential, 1 vice presidential debate that we'll be talking about over the course of this next month. So get a copy of that scorecard at ElectionSpeakers.com. All right, let's get to this debate that we just all saw and heard tonight. Now, one of the things you'll hear, those of you who are listening to us, and if you're a regular listener, you know that one of the things you're going to hear is each one of our guests tonight will give you a score, and they will tell you out of 100 who they feel won the debate tonight, so to speak. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the different aspects of what went well and what didn't go so well. Remember what Lori said. We are not talking about content. We are talking about the process of the debate, the speaking, etc. And all of this is to help folks have another dimension through which to judge the candidates before they make that vote on November the 6th. So keep that in mind. I'd like to start, if I could, please, with Monica Murphy. Monica, give us a sense of what you thought about the difference between these two tonight, and tell us your score and why you think that way.
Sure, Dennis. Well, I think we really saw a great picture of the candidates out in front here. For the scorings, my numbers, I don't think reflect what my heart reflected, but we are looking bipartisan here. So they both received an 80 out of 100 for me. And what's interesting, when I look at my scores, some of the scores are directly much higher on the Romney side versus Obama, and then on some of the Obama scores are so high where the Romney's score is low in terms of how we grade them. So I'm looking forward to going through that and talking a little bit about how one of them I thought scored so highly on something while the other scored so low.
But you basically scored this as a tie. All righty. Fred Balfour, what do you think? How'd you see it?
Well, Dennis, it's always interesting to score this because I learn a lot myself about presentation and speaking. I had a fairly wide, 70-point difference, 66 points for the president and 49 for Governor Romney. And Governor Romney was higher in one area, which we can talk about in a few minutes, and I thought Obama bested him, sometimes by a little, sometimes by a lot,
All right.
in other areas.
Thank you. Dr. Ellen Zaremba, how did you score it? What do you think?
I had the president being victorious in this debate. I used what I call a 10-point must system on these. That is, somebody had to get 10 because this is a contest between these two. And I had the president winning by 8 points in this debate. And I'm sure later on we'll get to talk about why in specifics. I actually thought that Governor Romney started very strongly, but I don't think he finished strongly. So President Obama, while I think he could have done a better job, and in some cases I thought he was a little less animated than he should have been, I think he was the stronger speaker this evening.
Got it. Lori?
We'll come back. I'd like to add
Alrighty,
something to
so-
what Ellen said.
So before
Lori.
I give my score, I want to say that I thought President Obama did as expected or a little weaker than expected due to an appearance of fatigue and seeming like, he was just sort of hanging out. I thought Romney, who I thought would do well because he is a debater, did better than expected. My score in terms of these debating skills was Governor Romney, 80, President Obama, 69. We heard from two of our remote judges, Ken Smith and Alyssa Richardson. They also rated Governor Romney relatively significantly higher than President Obama.
All right. Now, Robin Maxfield, this is a storytelling question. I mean, just tell us briefly, do you think that either one of them either had a story and explained it well or not?
Not a lot of time for that this evening. I thought that the reference to Donald Trump was a little snippet of a type of storytelling that painted a quick picture for everybody because everybody's familiar with Donald Trump. And it was interesting that Romney didn't negate that when Obama referred to Donald Trump being a small business.
So was either one a better storyteller tonight or no?
No,
Not
not
really.
necessarily.
Yeah, they didn't. Neither one of them told the story
Yeah,
very well, you're saying.
I don't think there was enough time for that. There would be something like that where you would use, the story would be, it would paint a picture in very short words. So.
Good. Alan?
I thought that there was an attempt to tell a story. That is, Romney attempted to tell a story, and what struck me about it, it was a story that was different from the story that we had heard previously. So I thought he was trying to tell a story about, I'm a regular Joe. I do care about the 47%. So I did think he was trying to get that message across. But it was antithetical to what he has been portrayed, at least, as saying on the campaign trail.
Fred Balfour.
I thought there was quite a story there, although if I think about a story as kind of using metaphors and synonyms and so on, I would agree, Robin, with you. But I thought Romney had the best kind of consistent set of points that he was weaving in all the time. So maybe narrative, a better narrative and a better control of his narrative. For example, trickle-down government, I think he used enough to get that trickle-down economy thing out of, try to blunt that and continually banging on small business and mention it. So that's examples of, I think, the narrative that he really didn't sound artificial as he got it through the story there, through the debate.
All right, now before we get too much more in detail about the debaters, let's just make a quick comment, if we can, about the moderator. How did he do? I mean, this is the moderator's part of this debate. So what do you think? How did the moderator do? Dr. Zaremba, what do you think?
I thought he was weak. I thought he was very weak. there were a number of times when the president and the governor spoke right over him. And if the goal of the debate is to make sure everybody gets a chance to say what they want to say, and there are several questions for them to consider, there were a number of times when those, for example, the last question couldn't really be considered because they ran out of time. So I didn't think this was his best effort.
Professor Zaremba, I have a question. Is it, though, uncomfortable for a moderator to try to interrupt the president? I mean, that seems to me an awkward spot to be in.
It is. That's what makes the job of a moderator very difficult. But it's a job. And one of the things you have to do is politely and diplomatically keep control of the debate.
Alan, one of the things I think it raises the question as, from listeners as we're looking at it, is do the listeners score Romney as doing well when he was interrupting and control, being more assertive with his communication, when he wouldn't let Jim Layer interrupt him? It's interesting. I wonder, some people there I would think saw him as a bully, while other people may have viewed him as being strong and passionate. So from a delivery standpoint, it could have worked in both ways in terms of his pace and his interrupting time that we look at as communicating coaches. And the other piece of that is that there was opportunities where I think Obama's pace was very slow in the beginning. He always had to ramp up before he got to a really good answer. And for listeners, I think it's hard to pay attention to such a long response.
Folks, this is Lori. Speech people have been talking for a long time now about Obama's issue with fluency. Mm-hmm. He's a great orator, yet he's a reflective man, he's a brilliant man, yet he does have a fluency issue. Fluency meaning the flow of words, ramping up, as you say, using a fair number, though he didn't use as many today, ums and ahs. So it is something you could use a little coaching on.
Just to be a little bit technical, folks who are listening, just to give you some sense of what speech coaches think about this. There's a difference when you talk about speed between the rate of speed of speaking and the pace of speed of speaking. Rate is the speed at which a speaker puts words together, one right after the other. So I've talked to you like this, I'm talking very fast. That's a fast rate of speed. Pace is the speed at which a speaker puts thoughts together. And Monica Murphy, I think what you're talking about, when you use the word pace, you were talking about the space of time between thoughts that the president was delivering. You're saying that the space of time between those thoughts was just too long. Is that what you mean by pace?
Yes, and I do also think the pace of time that was allowed in the response, I think we would call that as coaches a slow response time. That might also fall under the speed, and perhaps we'll move into talking a little bit more about that. But there was that slow ramp up for Obama's speaking style, as Lori was saying, his fluency in terms of starting and ramping up. But to that point, I think that his ending comments were his strongest. He came back very strong, and the pacing to me also refers to how quickly he would come back with a rebuttal response. So when Romney would say something, I was waiting for the Obama response to really come back strong and fast, not to have a hundredth of a second pause or hesitation. Now, some may perceive that to be thoughtful or insightful. Others may have thought that hesitation to be less credible. All about perception.
Monica, I'm interested in the building up example used. I like a guy that makes the points and then has the summary at the end, and it sounds like you're saying
that makes me crazy, Fred.
An alternative would be to make your point right away and then build the facts behind it. So I respond better to that. On one comment on Jim Lara, I thought the only reason he would be on this time would be he'd commit not to be such a milquetoast like he was 4 years ago, and apparently
Didn't work.
I can think of a number of people at PBS I would have rather seen on this control thing. But interrupting, I think the both interrupted. I thought Obama had a smoother and a kind of a more gentle interruption or override. I thought he did that much better. Romney did much more like I'd expect the CEO.
Yeah, but Fred, listen, this is a debate. This isn't a conversation.
It's not a time to be
And
polite in that way.
Obama was being polite. He's being a nice guy. This is a debate. And you got to be strong in a debate. I'm just devil's advocate with you now. I mean, what's the difference if he's nice and easy and gentle? He's too polite. He should be more aggressive. Romney was aggressive. That's good in a debate,
We're talking
right?
leading the free world.
I thought that you have that kind of mean and nasty, well, to take an extreme, Romney was farther out on the mean and nasty snarl, let me have more time, and Obama was a little bit more gentle, but I'm taking the time. So, again,
Now,
I wanna
Dr. Zaremba,
comment.
you see this in because your studies include, you're from the Department of Communication Studies at Northeastern, and you look at these things in a slightly different way than perhaps some of us. What about this idea of interrupting and being gentle versus being aggressive in a debate? What do you think?
Well, it depends upon what your goal is. What was Obama's goal to maintain his lead, and therefore essentially playing a rope-a-dope strategy and saying, I'm going to let him punch away because he's behind, and I'm going to deflect these arguments in my manner. You know, I agree that tonight he was less fluid than he could have been, but we have gotten a bit used to his lack of fluidity. So while it was pretty bad, I thought, tonight, it was only relatively weak because we've used to this pace. So I'm not sure it hurt him that much. I did think he was a little bit too laid back, particularly in the beginning. I'm not sure if it hurt him that much because I sensed in Romney the sense that I better come out with a knockout blow and I'm going to keep going at him. And I think Obama's strategy was knock yourself out. I'm just gonna rope-a-dope, and I'm gonna see what happens. Now, I could be wrong. Maybe the polls will bounce in Romney's way, but I thought it was his strategy. It was less than he was sad or tired, and more that this was my approach. I'm gonna act presidential, let him swing away, see what happens.
Okay.
Folks, remember this is about getting the undecided voters to swing your way. So I'm too tired to think, but I'd love to hear my colleagues' opinions. Did Romney or Obama succeed, in your opinion, in winning over this, whatever it is, 4%, 5%, 6%, 7% of people who claim that they still haven't made a decision?
I'll start, Laura. I'll weigh in with a couple things first. One of the goals I think they needed to both do was create enough level of what we call pathos or emotion for us to feel something to want to choose one of the candidates. And I think what we saw with both in the opening, it was tremendous. When Obama came out and spoke about, sweetie, happy anniversary, I do think that the perception right there was he was leading. However, when Romney balanced with how romantic, and I'm sure you are enjoying spending your first anniversary with me, it was an equal match of pathos. Not that I say if I liked it or not, but as a listener, that may have persuaded me in a way. And throughout the presentation, I think throughout the debate, there were many more times where that level of emotion was persuasive. The other piece that I think the undecided voters were looking for is succinct numbers and short-sounding sentence bites. And we did hear more of that, perhaps, and people can weigh in, but I heard a tool used a lot that we call as coaches numerical transition.
A lot of it from Romney.
Which Romney, I think, used very effectively.
Explain that a little bit, Mom.
Briefly, what that is, numerical transition, is assigning giving a number to the amount of points you're describing, and then going back and using the number to introduce each point. So, for example, he'd say, these are the 5 points for moving on blah, blah, blah. First, blah, blah, blah. Second, blah, blah, blah. So if you went off to the beach anytime during the first or second, third, blah, 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 brought us right back again. And for undecided voters, hearing short, succinct numbers and sound bites, I think is a persuasive technique that I saw him use tonight.
That tool, the numerical transition, is a tool that might work even if you're not succinct, because by saying number one, number two, number three, it sounds like you're in order, even if you might have digressed considerably. But I noticed that both of them did it. And to your point about pathos, you had a situation where obviously Romney was coached to bring in these stories about the various people he met along the way and how they're hurting, and because he tried to stick it in whenever he could. So, and it's a good technique. Emotion runs the show, and whether or not that was able to persuade people who are undecided, I don't know the answer to that, but it certainly is a good technique.
Fred.
I was most struck in terms of Lori getting to that percentage that's claimed they haven't decided. At the lack of eye contact with the camera, I was stunned by that.
Amen.
Opening,
That's right.
they both looked at Jim Lehrer. I thought, give him a minute.
Yeah.
Obama, in the second part of his 2-minute thing, turned right to the camera, and I said, aha, he's talking to me. The rest of the time, until closing, both of them talked to Jim Lehrer. I felt like they were talking and getting his approval. Romney, in his closing statement, looked right at the camera, And he didn't say it, but he's saying, "I want your vote." And I just think looking at the camera would have changed the way both of them expressed their ideas. I scored both of them.
On previous
really low.
shows, we've talked, because we've had the opportunity to hear Mitt Romney talk before, and we've talked about and critiqued him. And one of the things that we've talked about before, which I noticed tonight in spades, really, was his talking like a CEO. And I think this is one of the reasons he has this disconnect with other than those at the CEO level. And if you listen to him talk, yes, he says transition, Monica. You say 1, 2, 3, and then he expects it to happen. Doesn't give a lot of detail. Others will say, he'll say, "This is what I think." If you listen to his inflection pattern goes straight and boom, it stops. This is the way CEOs talk. They just say something and boom, they expect everybody to jump. That's the way he talks. And he was very aggressive today, much more aggressive than Obama, I thought, and which is a good thing. It's a debate. But on the other hand, my sense is that he's disconnected in this whole likability subject where he's really behind is because he talks too much like a CEO. And why does that happen? Because that's all he's ever been really as a CEO. So he's in that habit of being able to say things and not having any refutation or any rebuttal. So that, I think, in the long term is going to hurt him. And I don't think we saw any difference today than what we've seen in other speeches with him.
I do notice that in terms of facial expression, which, let's face it, that's pretty much what we were looking at, with two faces. The two comments are, it looked like Romney was really working on, and some of my remote judges, including Michelle Morrissey, commented that Romney was a very attentive listener. And my colleague Monica and I mentioned this. I thought he almost looked sugary sweet, like almost a fake smile when he was listening.
Romney looked like he was wincing to me. This is Robin.
Like he was what, Robin?
Wincing.
Wincing.
Wincing. I found the look on his face when Obama was speaking to be distracting. I didn't think it was an effective listening.
There's kind of a little smile there, it seemed to me, with Romney the whole time.
It looked
whole
like he was
evening.
in pain a little bit, but just the way he was holding his eyes, you know. They were squinched.
I've got to go to the bathroom.
Well, facial expression is very important. I have to really say that Obama's, when he smiles, boy, does he light up a stage.
Sure.
You know,
Sure.
it was so interesting because he seemed like 75% fatigued, but then that 10% of really that charm.
But
you
it took
know,
46 minutes for it to kick in.
Yeah.
He
Fred.
really is authentic, though. You really have to
Right,
say
Fred.
that.
I thought the camera work here really prevented us from a couple of the major points on the score sheet that I think are critical. And it was a tight headshot from just below the throat up. You could see a hand appear once in a while, but it wasn't enough to really get a feel for it. You could watch the shoulder and the body, and I thought Obama had a much more natural kind of flowing movement as he spoke that you could still see with that short headshot, where Romney was could have been standing at attention in the military sitting.
What about that opening handshake when they first walked on stage? And a lot of people base their first impression on that handshake. And I don't, who around the radio dial here noticed what
sure.
happens? First,
Sure.
the hands connect. Then the other hand goes up on the arm of their opponent
Yeah.
to show a level of warmth.
Yeah.
Well, interestingly enough, who noticed whose arm was higher
Oh, Obama's arm was higher.
and whose arm was first?
Obama's.
Oh, first.
I don't know, it seemed like Romney was the first to have his arm, but then Obama's was higher. Were we
see.
talking about
Yeah,
him being
yeah,
a
yeah.
basketball
Yeah,
player?
yeah.
We had a little conversation going, but it was interesting how they both, obviously they both did it to show that warmth and rapport. And did it work for listeners? What if one had done it and one hadn't? Did both of them doing it sway us in any way? I mean, those were the only gestures we really got to see because of the tight headshot, like you said, Fred.
You know, one of the things on our scorecard that we talk about quite a bit is language and the way that thoughts are expressed, and, you know, whether there's tentative language or appropriate language or whatever. My sense tonight was that Governor Romney had a better grasp of the language. If we put this together, I'll give you an example in a second. Put this together with Monica, with your comment about pace and fluency, Laurie. His sentences were smoother. They were said more comfortably, it seemed to me, and he was able to put his thoughts, I thought, into much greater shirt-sleeve English than was Mr. Obama. I thought he said things that were more, granted,
Or maybe then he's been doing throughout
okay,
his
Granted, he's been doing it, and they're sort of stock answers, and we've heard it all before, but the sound of it seemed to me to be much more casual, much more formal for a debate, and yet shirt-sleeve English. Accompany that with the facial expressions and all the other stuff that he had. I thought he did a better job.
I agree with you, Dennis. I was really disappointed when the closing statement, Obama used tentative language and said, what I've tried to do. I couldn't believe it, because we know with the primacy and recency, that's what people remember. He not only did that, he negated himself by using, when he talked about the role of federal government, he said the role of federal government is to keep everyone safe,
Yeah.
but...
Oh, but, yeah.
And then he went on to say other things. So that was disappointing.
Yeah, I agree with you about the language, and I think it's for one simple reason, because I see it with my clients all the time. I could say it, in 7 words or less. I believe that Romney prepared and practiced more.
It certainly seemed as though he took this more seriously. Obama seemed to come across as sort of a casual, conversational thing, and as I was saying earlier, this is a debate, and it seemed to me that Romney came out prepared and stronger sounding for debating.
I thought so, particularly in the beginning. The president, throughout his career, has been very successful in his pace, where he pauses for a second and then finds the right word. Tonight, it seemed like it was taking him longer to find the right word, and when he found it, it might not have been the right word. So I thought, particularly in the beginning, Governor Romney was stronger. I actually wrote on my card that the first round, when it was the first question, went to Romney. As the debate went on, I felt like Romney was trying to score points and was moving around nervously in a way that I think might have been distracting. I felt like he looked a little bit more as if this was essential for him, and he was desperate. So I thought in the beginning, definitely the case was Romney was scoring, but towards the end, I'm not so sure that he did. And I'm curious to see how the American people as a whole reacted to it, but I don't think it worked for him at the end.
Well, let's talk a little bit for a moment just about how the audience here at Cafe Nicholas in Brookline, Massachusetts, how they scored it. They scored this Obama 76 out of 100 and Romney 64 out of 100. So the group here at Cafe Nicholas in Brookline, Massachusetts sees Obama being the winner of this by 76 to 64. Lori.
I have some national scores from our remote judges scattered around the country at different organizations and different universities.
They are what, Facebooking, tweeting us in?
They actually just sent in their scores to our college coordinators who are helping us out, Jackie and Lena. So shout out to Michelle Marcy and Michael Slemmer, Kenneth Smith, and Alyssa Richardson. Now they came out with something different. Their average was Obama 60 and Romney 80.75.
Wow.
Again, it's hard to know where political bias fits
Yeah.
into this.
Yeah, sure. Well,
You know?
we're going to find that. I mean, that's the whole point about having a debate, that you have the opportunity to see the differences and hear what the differences are. And I think that's the point of having several debates, to see where how it changes and where it goes as we go along here. So go ahead, Fred. Sorry.
I wanted to comment on the Romney's ability to get his ideas across. I still found him early on too much the PowerPoint guy. He was banging those number facts in there too fast for me. Harkening back to Bill Clinton, who had a tremendous amount of data in the Democratic convention. He made that data believable and alive, and it came through. So it's not too much data, it's just banging those
It's
PowerPoint
pace.
bullets.
This is what Monica was talking about. When Clinton was talking, he would put out something, and stop. Allow for it to sink in a little bit, and then pick it up. This is pace. Whereas tonight we heard Romney, boom, boom. It was just, the pace was much too fast, I thought.
Fair enough, but I think you got to humanize that number. A CEO is going to bang the numbers out, and
Yeah.
other CEOs or investment bankers will listen to it.
Yeah.
I think you have to make that number come alive for the people, and Romney got into that a little better towards the end. He slowed it down.
And I think stylistically, Romney is Obama's very good with his rhetorical dialoguing,
Oh, yes.
as opposed to off the cuff. He hesitates, he takes a little bit more time to be thoughtful, and I think some listeners may perceive that as weakness. Others perceive it as thoughtful. Others might see it as hesitate. Well, we're all looking at each other here around the radio dial, but interestingly, some people don't like a little bit of hesitation.
Well, how did you feel? Let's be two specific things before we have to wrap up here. Two specific things. How did you all feel? I'd like to go around starting with Dr. Zarumba. How did you feel about the segment at the end of the jobs category when there was a little debate, so to speak, between Jim Lehrer, the moderator, and Governor Romney about who's going to get the last word? I'll get the last word. No, you get the. No, I want the. You remember that little? How did that go? How did you
To
feel
me, it
about
just
that?
seemed clumsy in terms of how it was moderated. I thought that, generally speaking, that the moderator needed to do a better job of making sure that each of the persons adhered to the rules. So for me, the takeaway from that was you need to be a little bit less like Casper Milquetoast when you're running the show. I also thought, now, this doesn't mean that this is going to be representative of the American people, but towards the end, as I mentioned before, it seemed like Governor Romney felt like he had to get these shots in. If he doesn't get these shots in, he's in big trouble. It reminded me of the Warren Zevon line. I'm gambling in Havana. I'm a desperate man. Send lawyers, guns, and money. Get me out of this. So it just seemed like he was too much like, I got to get this in. And sometimes during that repartee about who was going to go when, I felt that.
Fred Balfour, what do you think, Fred Balfour, about that segment?
One of the issues I heard expressed about what's wrong with Washington today is the press used to be a referee and now they're a participant.
Huh.
And I thought that was a really astute observation. And I think Lara's he wasn't quite enough of a referee, and at that point he should have been refereeing better. Romney was good to push, but Lori should have controlled.
What do you think, Lori?
Format-wise, that's what I'm thinking about now. Maybe we need a different format just to let them converse with each other for a longer period of time. Maybe a moderator seems a bit passé.
Monica Murphy,
Did
what do you
work.
think about that particular segment?
I think about that particular segment that there's a very fine line that the moderator has to walk. They have to be very committed to their role, which means willing to raise their voice and step in. However, they have to show the utmost respect because they have millions of people listening to how they handle people that are very highly respected. And so it's an unfairness. Now, I also think there could be a prompt to say, let it get a little more heated. And perhaps that's, as you said, the media comes into play here with how much we can really push.
Storytelling coach Robin Maxfield, what do you think about that particular segment there?
I think that, I think that I don't have a whole lot more to add to that. It'll be interesting to see how people perceive Romney's pushiness. Will they see it as a take charge kind of guy, or as a I don't respect people and I can do whatever I want? It'll be interesting.
I know we don't have time, but a key question is, did Romney become more likable? I know we don't have time to answer
Here's
it.
the one last thing I want to ask you about, because everybody was talking about it going into the debate, that both of them were practicing their zingers tonight. I heard one I thought that was definitely practiced and rehearsed, and he finally got it in when Mr. Romney said, well, you're entitled to your own plane, your own house, but not your own facts. That was definitely a rehearsal. It came out so smoothly and so quickly. That was a zinger. Did you notice any others, or what did you think about the whole idea of getting zingers in there?
I didn't notice any by Obama, and I thought there was one opportunity when he could have. When Romney said something about, I'd like to see your accountant, I think Obama could have said, we've seen your accountant, you pay 14% in your taxes, but he did not. And again, this was, I think, was part of his philosophy. I am not going to be abrasive, I'm not going to be offensive, I'm winning, he's going to have to take this to me. I don't think that line I agree with you, I think that line was clearly a planned zinger, but it didn't really zing. So, so I didn't
Zing
think
went the strings.
Rope-a-dope. Fred Balfour, what do you think?
I think one of, back to Bill Clinton, one of his big zingers was math. It's just
Right.
simple
It's
math.
arithmetic.
Arithmetic,
Yeah,
that's right,
yeah.
arithmetic. And President Obama used that once gently. I thought he could have not stepped over the bound that Dr. Zrim was talking about, but could have pushed that harder.
Monica Murphy, what do you think?
No
Zing it?
comment. There wasn't enough zinging to even pull anything worth mentioning.
Yeah, Robin Maxwell, any zingers in there for you?
Yeah, I liked Obama's comment, well, if you're 54 or 55, you might want to pay attention.
Yeah. All right, well, I hope all of you were paying attention tonight because we're about to wrap up the program. Is there anything else that our guests would like to share, or any of our coaches like to share before we wrap up this portion of ElectionSpeakers.com?
I just want to invite everyone to keep listening, come to our live events, and download that scorecard because it's very educational, learning all about speech and the difference in a way between, and it's hard sometimes to be objective, between looking at a debate objectively versus just politically and who you agree with or don't agree with.
It's one of the reasons why we do this program, folks, to give you another way to look at these debates and to see who answered, who didn't answer, who avoided the question, who's got some sort of little slick technique or zinger to put in there. We want you to give you that. We want to give you that kind of perspective on this election as well. So, and we do hear from you from Facebook and Twitter. And by the way, if you don't have that, you can reach us on the Twitter at Speech Improve. Not Speech Improvement, but Speech Improve. So that's the Twitter, and you all know how to reach us on Facebook. We love hearing from you, so please keep those cards and letters coming, as they used to say. And we will, as Laurie said, we'll be back with you again. This next time will be for the vice presidential debate on the 11th, I think it is. And we'll have a few special guests with us at that time. And, of course, we welcome you to be back with us. And until that's with us, which is about another week or so, that's all we have time for tonight on this edition of ElectionSpeakers.com, and we'll be back with more of the most unique critique of these important speakers in this 2012 presidential campaign. Until then, I want to give special thanks to our guest, Dr. Alan Zaremba,
Thank you.
Fred Balfour, and of course to our everlasting coaches here, Laurie Schlaff, Robin Maxwell, and Monica Murphy. Until next time then, thanks for listening. This is Dr. Dennis Becker saying thanks for listening and bye for now.